welcome to Gems of Margazhi. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure and honor to do this.
Thank you so much. Today we're in conversation with Aniruddha Knight, who belongs to a 275-year-old legacy of dancers and musicians from the southern part of India. He has not only embraced his heritage, but has also redefined this art for the modern audiences. So Anna, coming from a ninth generational family of Bharatanatyam and classical musicians, what does it mean to you to belong to such a monumental legacy, and how do you make it your own?
It's a very big question you're asking because there are so many components to the answer. A lot of people assume that it's easier when you come from such a family that has such weight to what they produced, because their art was insurpassable. So how do you represent that in a modern setting where the world is so fast right now? Because even to learn this type of dance, this type of music, takes your entire lifetime. Today people assume that you can learn Bharatanatyam in a year, 2 years, 3 years tops. But in this style, you have to learn the basic artavus for at least 8-9 years before you can be introduced to items. So it becomes a very big responsibility for me in trying to fit this art form that has taken so long to come to this level of refinement, but to ensure that the younger generation gets it not for 15 years, not for 20 years, but within a 10-year span you have to start performing. So that ends up being a very big responsibility for me. And it's like monumental, it's a gargantuan task of trying to maintain a certain level of quality and integrity to the art form. And that will always eat at me because for me, I'll never be enough for it, Yeah, there's always something. You can be an excellent dancer, but you can never reach that pinnacle of perfection. And maybe it's not about perfection, right?
Yeah.
So throughout one's life, and particularly for me personally, it's the level of questions that arise from oneself that need to be answered, right? So I'm constantly being questioned by society about the art and the family, but no one really has any clue about how many questions I need to ask myself to get through it.
Right.
So it is a monumental task of preserving, but to ensure also that it expands. That becomes my responsibility.
Right. So it is Margazhi is a season of art and devotion. So what does Margazhi personally mean to you?
So art and devotion are not two separate things at all. They are completely interchangeable. The dynamic is the same. So when we talk about devotion, what are we talking about? Are we talking about devotion to a religious devotion or a secular devotion to the art form itself? For me, Margazhi, when I think of Margazhi, I don't think of dance. I think of the pre-dawn time when there's this beautiful mist and that 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, that's total silence and peace. That is Margazhi. Not dance for me. Dance should be all the time.
Of course.
Yes. Yes.
Lovely.
All the time or no time. I'm an extremist. I mean, I either get into it or I'm out of it.
Okay. So Bharatanatyam is an art form that was predominantly performed by women. So being a male artist, how did you step into this space, and how has your perspective on the art form changed now?
So I was born into the art form. I never, from childhood, it was never about gender. Because my teacher was a woman. And she never taught me the dance through perspective of a man should dance like this and a woman should dance like this. It's about grace and movement. And that is gender neutral. That surpasses anything that's male or female or whatever you want to classify a human being. So stepping into the art with this perspective in a society that actually bifurcates everything, needing to categorize and box someone into a certain space, I think for a number of years, people didn't know what to do with me. Really, because I come from a repertoire that is in a female voice, right? So there was a generation before me there where if you're going to be a male artist, particularly in Bharatanatyam, I'm not talking about other art forms, you play the male role. It's a Rama, Krishna, the hero. You always had to be very careful in not crossing that very fine but very significant line. And I had no idea about that. I just danced, and I was always perturbed about why people were so ultra sensitive about that issue. But then finally I just said, I'm just going to do what I do. Just do what I do. I can't change anything for anybody. Because it's a responsibility. Again, it comes back to responsibility. I can't change the art form because I'm me. Right? So being a male artist has been very tough.
Now that we are talking about Balamma, Balasaraswati is such a established and celebrated Bharatanatyam artist. So any moment or lesson from her that you've learned or lived with that guides you till date?
She had a very, very difficult life. It was an uphill battle from the get-go. So I am very fortunate in that sense because that uphill battle she fought, which my battle is different. It's not the same. For her, it was her health, it was society. There were a lot of things that were very complicated for her, but she's stuck to her principles and integrity with the art form and moved ahead with it. And that I need to always remember, which I forget so often.
Being an artist who performs globally, how do you tailor-make your Bharatanatyam performances for the international audiences without losing the essence?
So there has to be a breakdown of what the art is about. So you have to break it down into its basic elements. It's always very helpful to have demonstrations in explaining the art in a certain secular way. You don't want to approach the art as in the approach of religion, but the spirit of it. So you have to be selective about pieces that you do that can communicate emotions and not states of being. If you understand what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
And the dance has to be experienced. We always, I think, we're paranoid of needing to understand something. But the purpose of the dance and music is the experience of it. So if I look at a piece of jewelry, I'm not looking at it through needing to understand how it was made. I can look at it and just appreciate it for what it is, as an experience. So it's all experiential. Either you're going to fall into it and be attracted by it, or you're not going to get it. But if I need to sit and make you understand about something, then I'm, as an artist, as a dancer, I have failed. Because the art itself is fleeting in time, right? Because what you do at that particular moment is finished. It can never be repeated again, ever. In spatial time, no. It's done. It just diffuses. So what do you, as an artist, how do you make someone understand that? Right? Because it just keeps going and going and going and going. Because that element of particularly abhinaya in this style is not fixed at all. At that moment, what the mind perceives and creates through the poetry is just for that moment. So if you say, can you do that again? I can't. Literally. because you can't. It's not set in stone at all. It just diffuses.
How do you balance the traditional and contemporary relevances in this art form?
So you have to be very clear about how far you want to push the boundary of what the tradition is. Because once you push too far, you're going to lose the essence of the central essence of the tradition itself. But as an artist, you are bound and responsible to expand for that particular generation that you're in. So Balama did not necessarily represent not just her lineage, but how she could take that art and make it relevant at that particular moment. Right?
Yeah.
It's to take a 275-year-old piece, a 300-year-old piece, and to make it relevant at that moment.
Yeah.
That's why the theme of so much of this is love, Sringara. Because that's something that's eternal. That's something that we can never get away from, for no matter what we do.
Yeah. You've contributed to preserving the Dhanammal traditions through the Balasaraswati Scripts Foundation. How do you think it is a responsibility for archiving the art form for the future generation?
So we have a very large archive, actually. But to say that the family contributed to putting that archive together, I would not agree on that.
Okay.
It was, there are pockets of universities that have also put together an archive of the music. But truly the dedication of Louise Scripps, who was Balama's ardent student and devotee of her art, she collected thousands of articles, hundreds of interviews, thousands of photographs, many hours of music, and some footage. But she organized the entire thing. So what I have today is I have that memory of my lineage, which I would not have had if it wasn't taken on as a life's work by her. But now I have to begin adding how I teach. So I mean, now you have too much technology to use. And so what we do is we record every class. And they're fortunate to be able to use that as a reference, but you have to remember this is an oral tradition. So no matter how much you try to preserve it on camera or on books or in anything, it is the tradition that can only be passed on through direct learning.
So how does Bharatanatyam influence your life off the stage? Does it change the way you look at the world or take up challenges, perceive the world per se?
It's an interchangeable influence, right? Bharatanatyam influences your life. Your life influences what you produce as an artist. So they're both intertwined. So even things that you do within the family, ரசம் வச்சா இப்படிதான் ரசம் இருக்கும், இப்படிதான் இருக்கணும், இப்படிதான் சாப்பிடணும், இதுதான் முறை. So that is passed on from one generation to the next. And we're very proud of that. But it's the mundane and secular things that can really influence one's art. It doesn't have to be something that's mind-blowingly, the concept of it doesn't have to be so great. Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel I don't want to have anything to do with the dance off stage. Right?
Yeah.
Keep it where it is sometimes.
Correct.
People always ask me, you must have all these artist friends. I don't have any artist. I'm not a very friendly person in general.
Oh, okay.
I'm a very introverted, completely spaced out, can spend days and days and weeks together just with myself.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm not... The place that I am myself is only on stage. Rest of the time, it's complete fakery.
Well, no, you don't come off as someone
I
like that.
polished it.
Well, you're doing a good job at it.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I can do. I don't know whether I'm a good dancer, but this
Oh,
fake
no,
ring.
you are. Come on.
No.
You are.
I'm just saying this because that's the reality that you end
yeah.
up having.
Yeah.
Because the experience of dancing itself is a mirage. It's something that is not like actually existing. You don't feel anything. So when you do a piece in the dance, if it's a Sringara piece, we come back to Sringara. Am I actually in love on stage? No. My knees are killing me. My back is hurting. I'm trying to listen to the music, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But you're not experiencing the emotion itself. It's a space of not feeling anything.
But trying to express something else.
You are creating an illusion for the spectator. And that spectator, you have to be clear on how far you can go into nothing. That's where all the emotion comes from, nothing.
Wow, that's such a deep thought.
That's the reality of it. It comes from that sunya, nothing else. That's why it's a fleeting experience. Do I experience the emotion? No, I have nothing to do with the emotion. But how do you make your mind and face and body and create that particular emotion where you feel it, but I have nothing to do with it?
This totally changes my perspective when I'm watching someone perform. Male dancers in Bharatanatyam are still a minority. How do you see this dynamic changing, and what do you have to say to aspiring male dancers?
It's a tough question because sometimes honesty hurts, and that's why you should never be honest. So, if you're ready to put up with criticism, if you're ready to be put up with bullying, if you're ready to be boxed into a particular viewpoint of what you should do, what you should wear, how you should be, then do it. But it's going to be a tough life. And the trick there is to not let it become bitter. Because the matter of success for any artist, what's the percentage? Point something.
Yeah.
Right? So, as a young person, you can always visualize a future that you expect. But when that expectation is not met, how do you handle that is the question, right?
Right, yeah.
So, being in that minority it can be very, 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 very difficult. And if you can put up with that, you can manage it both psychologically, financially, practically, then do it. And hopefully you're a good dancer on top of that.
Yeah. And I have to ask you, because I work with jewelry, and jewelry is beautiful art that kind of, merges with a lot of other art forms. So, jewelry is more than an ornament. It's a part of the narrative in Bharatanatyam. So, how do you choose pieces that blend in with the stories that you are telling?
The irony of the question that you're asking is, my family always stepped away from that.
Okay.
Balama, Suryan Chandran, Netti Chutti, adala vechikove mattanga.
Oh, okay.
Raakodi kuda vechikka mattanga.
Huh.
Simple ജിമിക്കി ഇല്ലാട്ടി കമ്മൽ ഒരു മാട്ടിൽ ഒരു അടിക്ക് അവിടെതാണ് രണ്ട് വളയം. Because she needed to, there's a fine line, a gray space where if you give too much importance to what you wear in jewelry, you are going to take something away from the art. But she was an extremist that way. She was at the other end of the spectrum. So her clothes would not match. Her blouse would not match her sari would not match her pajama.
Okay.
And she did that on purpose. Because at that time there was creating of the dance costume, the stitched costume, importance, particularly when dance started to play a main role in movies. there was the need to dress up and beautify oneself. She stepped away from that. But my mother was the exact opposite of my grandmother. And I
Took on your mother.
I can surpass my mother.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for the male artist, there is no real traditional. You wear what you feel is appropriate, but you have to make sure that things don't fly off.
Yeah.
And they don't get caught in something. So the piece that you wear has to be sustainable throughout the entire performance. And make sure you're not uncomfortable with it. So that's the main thing.
Right. So we are talking about traditions. There are a lot of traditional jewelry styles that are slowly fading away. So how do you think performances like yours help preserve or revive these styles and bring them back?
I wouldn't say particularly my performances in any way like that. But of course, there's the need for the traditional Magamara, Addige, Mookutti. The central part of it, as I was talking to you during the break, Bulak. That is the central attraction for the face. I mean, and that stands so unique in Indian culture. And that's one thing my grandmother did wear, was the Bulak. இப்போ I don't see that size of bullock, பெரிய bullock. இப்போலாம் பசங்களுக்குலாம் வாங்கணும்னா கூட நான் பெருசு தான் போட சொல்லுவேன். They hate it, but
What you gotta do, what you gotta do.
You have to do what I tell you to do.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You can choose what to do later.
Yeah.
ஆனாக்க என் பேச்சு தான் கேட்கணும்.
கேட்கணும். Yeah. So, coming from a biracial family, deeply rooted in traditions, how do you feel it's added perspective to your artistic journey?
Day-to-day life, because I grew up both in India and in the United States, it was something that was very organic. Because when I went to school in the US, we lived in a very, very rural part of the United States. And the school that I went to, from kindergarten to 12th, was about 300 students. That's it. And I was the only non-white student in my entire school. My mother would pick me up from school in a sari. If it's snowing, in a sari. If it's raining, in a sari. So that was, she always stuck to her roots. She never changed when she went to the United States. But cuisine-wise and things like that, of course, because rasam sadamum irukum, you're going to have a Caesar salad along with the rasam sadam because that's how the family is shaped. It's two cultures combined. But that was just something normal for me. And it has helped my journey, particularly my American side, has helped me in analyzing what I do. To be able to step back and to look at what I do. Or to step back and look at what somebody else does. My Indian side gives me that deeply rooted self in the devotion of what I have for my art. And also culturally. You have to be comfortable wearing a sharwani, you have to be comfortable wearing a beshti, you have to be comfortable in shorts. Right? And that gives that opportunity. But the gray side of the area is that you actually never end up identifying with any one thing.
What do you think is the true gem of Margazhi?
Off the top of my head, let's say puliyodare, sakara pongal, and tulasi.
Okay. Wow. I mean, yeah, Sabha food is something. Yeah.
நான் கோயில் சாப்பாடு
Oh, நீங்க கோயில் சாப்பாடு சொல்றீங்க. Okay.
ஆமா.
Yeah.
சபாக்கு இதுக்கு சம்பந்தமே இல்ல.
Okay. Okay. So, any koil that you
பார்த்து சாரதி?
Lovely. Yes. Thank you so much for doing this.
It was really my pleasure.
This was such an enriching conversation, and I think it totally changed my perspective of how I would perceive an art form. In the outside, it's all hunky dory, pretty to look at, art, you appreciate, but there's so much behind it, so much depth, so much that an artist's journey goes
Yes.
through. And I think you very beautifully expressed it, and you called a spade, like I said. So thank you so much. It's been lovely for me.
It's
And,
been it's an honor for me to do this, because to have a platform that can ask honest questions and to be able to handle the actual answers to it, sometimes it doesn't work that well.
Thank you. It means
Thank
a
you.
lot coming from you. Thank you so much.